Imagine you're a sailor, asleep in your bunk, anchored inside what's supposed to be the safest harbor in the world. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion rips through the hull. The lights flicker, the floor tilts, and icy seawater rushes in. In the chaos, you hear men screaming, bulkheads collapsing, and then darkness. Within minutes, your battleship, a fortress of steel, has vanished beneath the waves. This is not a scene from a movie. It happened on October 14th, 1939, when a single German submarine slipped into Britain's main naval base at Scapa Flow and changed naval warfare forever. The attacker was U-47, led by Günther Prien, a commander who would become a Nazi hero. His daring raid sank the battleship HMS Royal Oak, killed more than 800 sailors, and shocked the British people into realizing their greatest fleet was vulnerable. But this isn't just the story of one submarine raid. It's the story of fear, propaganda, and the deadly chess game of submarine warfare. And by the end, we'll uncover how U-47 itself mysteriously vanished, leaving behind one of the great unsolved mysteries of World War II. But you may be asking why the Scapa Flow mattered? To understand why this raid mattered, we need to step back. Scapa Flow wasn't just any harbor. It was the Royal Navy's fortress in the north, nestled among the Orkney Islands of Scotland. With its deep waters and narrow entrances, it was considered nearly impossible for enemy ships to infiltrate. During World War I, it had been the secure anchorage for the Grand Fleet. After the war, it was where the captured German fleet was scuttled. Over 50 warships sunk in a single day to avoid surrender. By 1939, Scapa Flow remained the beating heart of British naval power. For sailors stationed there, it felt untouchable. For the British public, it was a symbol. As long as the fleet was safe in Scapa Flow, Britain was safe. But in Berlin, Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat force, had a bold plan to destroy that sense of security. His idea was simple and terrifying. If a U-boat could sneak into Scapa Flow and sink a battleship, it would send shockwaves through Britain and prove that no harbor was beyond Germany's reach. And so he chose a young commander named Günther Prien for the mission. U-47 was a German Type 7B U-boat, fast, maneuverable, and deadly. At just over 66 meters long, it carried 14 torpedoes, a deck gun, and a crew of around 45 men. Life aboard was cramped, damp, and claustrophobic, with barely enough room for bunks and supplies. At the helm was Günther Prien. Born in 1908, he joined the Merchant Navy, lost his job during Germany's economic collapse, and later turned to the Navy. He quickly rose through the ranks for his discipline and boldness. To his crew, he was respected but demanding, a man who could stay calm under pressure. Prien's men trusted him, and they would need that trust because their new mission sounded impossible. Sneak into Scapa Flow, past wrecks deliberately sunk to block entry, navigate fierce currents in pitch black, avoid mines and patrol boats, fire torpedoes at anchored warships, and then, somehow, escape. If they failed, there would be no rescue, only a watery grave. On the evening of October 13, 1939, U-47 slipped away from its base and headed north into the stormy waters of the North Sea. Inside the sub, tension built as men checked torpedoes, whispered over instruments, and prepared for the most dangerous patrol of their lives. At midnight, U-47 approached Kirk Sound, one of the narrow entrances to Scapa Flow. It was the only possible way in, but it was littered with block ships, old freighters deliberately sunk to form barriers. The current was strong, pulling at the submarine. At times, Prien had only meters to spare as he edged U-47 between the hulks. One wrong move, and the submarine would have grounded or been crushed. But by sheer skill and luck, U-47 slipped through. Against all odds, the Germans were inside Britain's most secure harbor. Through the periscope, Prien scanned the harbor. In the distance loomed the dark silhouette of a battleship, HMS Royal Oak. Nearby lay the seaplane carrier, HMS Pegasus.
Fire!
At 12:58 a.m., Prien ordered the first torpedo fired. The crew held their breath as it streaked through the water and hit, but the explosion was weak, barely more than a thud. On Royal Oak, the crew thought it was a minor accident, perhaps an internal mishap. No alarm was raised. This was Prien's chance. He adjusted his aim and fired 3 more torpedoes. This time, the results were catastrophic. The torpedoes slammed into Royal Oak's starboard
Help
side.
me, I can't hold it! Grab the hose
Huge
now!
explosions
We have to get out of
ripped
here.
through the battleship. Within minutes, the ship was fatally wounded.
Help us!
Fires raged,
We're going
compartments
down!
flooded, and men scrambled desperately in the dark. Royal Oak rolled over and sank in just 15 minutes. 833 sailors were killed, many of them young cadets who had only recently
anyone out
joined the
there?
Navy. Survivors clung to wreckage in the freezing water, watching in
Help
horror as their ship disappeared beneath the waves. The harbor erupted in chaos. Searchlights swept across the water, patrol boats scrambled, but U-47 had already turned back toward Kirk Sound. With nerves of steel, Prien navigated the sub past the block ships once again. Against all odds, U-47 slipped back into the North Sea undetected. By dawn, the news spread. Britain's mighty Royal Navy had lost a battleship, not in battle, but in its own supposedly impregnable harbor. The shock was enormous. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, newly returned to government, called it a heavy and far-reaching blow. For the British public, the sinking was terrifying. If Scapa Flow could be breached, was anywhere truly safe? For Nazi Germany, the propaganda victory was priceless. Günther Prien was paraded as a hero. German newspapers hailed him as the Bull of Scapa Flow. He received the Knight's Cross from Hitler himself, and his crew became celebrities. But Britain learned quickly. Within weeks, new defenses were built, block ships reinforced, and air patrols increased. Never again would Scapa Flow be so vulnerable. The raid on Scapa Flow was one of the most daring submarine missions of World War II. It showed that even the strongest fleets were vulnerable to stealth, and it marked the beginning of a brutal submarine war in the Atlantic. For U-47, the story continued for a while. Over the next year and a half, Prien and his crew sank more than 30 Allied ships. They became symbols of German naval power. But in March 1941, U-47 vanished during a patrol in the North Atlantic. The submarine never returned, and to this day, its wreck has never been found. Some believe it was sunk by British destroyers. Others think it struck a mine. The truth remains a mystery at the bottom of the sea. As for HMS Royal Oak, her wreck still lies in Scapa Flow, resting place of over 800 men. Each year, divers lay a white ensign over her hull in memory of those who perished. In the end, U-47's daring raid achieved its goal, shocking Britain, boosting German morale, and changing the way navies thought about submarine warfare. But it also set the stage for years of brutal conflict in the Battle of the Atlantic, where thousands of sailors, German and Allied alike, would never return home. On that October night in 1939, one submarine proved that no fleet, no harbor, no nation was untouchable. And it began with a single daring commander, guiding U-47 into the heart of Britain's naval pride.